Veterans Day celebrates and honors the service of the men and women in our armed forces, the United States Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and the Coast Guard. Since the inception of our republic, countless individuals have served with honor. The following is merely a microcosm in the galaxy of bravery and gallantry that is the hallmark of the American serviceman. Samuel Downing was born in Newburyport, Massachusetts in November of 1764. In 1780, at the age of 16, Samuel enlisted in the Continental Army and fought in numerous battles, including the Battle of Saratoga, where General Burgoyne of the British Army was defeated. Samuel passed away in 1867 at the age of 102. Richard Winters was born in New Holland, Pennsylvania on January 21st, 1918. He enlisted in the Army in 1942 and later attended Officers Candidate School. He volunteered for the New Army Airborne Forces. Lieutenant Winters was assigned to E Company, 506 Parachute Brigade in what was then the newly formed 101st Airborne, the Screaming Eagles. After parachuting into Normandy in the early hours of June 6, 1944, Lieutenant Winters led an assault with only 13 men on a battery of German 105mm guns that were firing upon Utah Beach on D-Day at a place known as Brecourt Manor. His famous chant of "Follow me" would earn the respect and admiration of his men from that moment on. The 14 men of Easy Company assaulted and neutralized the artillery with such skill and efficiency that Lieutenant Winters' plan of attack is still taught in West Point as the textbook method of assaulting a gun battery. For his leadership, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross and promoted to captain. Captain Winters would lead his men at Carrollton, Eindhoven, the siege of Bastogne, and through many more battles for the remainder of World War II. Easy Company would ultimately take the Eagle's Nest, Hitler's compound in Berchtesgaden, Germany. Dick Winters retired as a major, with many decorations and the endless love and respect of his men. Major Richard Winters passed away 19 days short of his 93rd birthday on January 2nd, 2011. Douglas Mike Day enlisted in the U.S. Navy and accepted the challenge of BUDS training. He became a member of the elite Navy SEALs. As a Chief Petty Officer and Platoon Chief of SEAL Team 4's Foxtrot Platoon, he was part of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Mike led a team of SEALs and Iraqi Army Scouts on more than 140 direct action missions in the vicinity of Fallujah, Iraq, from October 2006 to April 2007. These missions resulted in the interdiction of several insurgent networks in the Euphrates River Valley and included the capture of one theater-level high-value target. In the early morning hours of April 6, 2007, several kilometers northeast of Fallujah, Chief Day entered an Al-Qaeda compound that belonged to a cell responsible for ambushing coalition ground forces and shooting down coalition aircraft. Upon entering the compound, he sustained 27 separate gunshot wounds, 11 that impacted his body armor, and 16 that directly impacted his body, in addition to shrapnel from fragmentation wounds. Using his secondary weapon, a 9mm pistol, Chief Day then mortally wounded 4 Al-Qaeda fighters before securing the rest of the location, ensuring the safety of 6 non-combatants and 2 detainees before walking into a medevac helicopter, remarkably under his own power. During the assault on April 6, 2007, Joseph Clark Schweeler, a U.S. Navy SEAL from Crystal Falls, Michigan, was killed in action by enemy gunfire, along with 1 Iraqi Army scout. For his actions on that day, he received the Silver Star in 2007, which was later upgraded to the Navy Cross. Day retired from the Navy in 2010 as a senior chief petty officer with more than 21 years of service. Today, he's a motivational speaker, health advocate, and brand advocate with the Virginia-based organization, Daylight LLC. Rod Dorilas persuaded his parents at the age of 17 to allow him to enlist in the United States Navy. After boot camp, Rod rigorously trained for 2 years. His dedication and performance earned him 2 chevrons on his sleeve and the rating of fire controlman for Tomahawk cruise missiles. The immense responsibility for planning, maintaining, and executing missile actions was now his. 3 combat deployments as strike warfare officer on board the USS The Sullivans. His duty was to strategize and plan Tomahawk strike missions in the Persian Gulf and Mediterranean theaters. Seeing duty in the 5th and 6th Fleets, Rod's journey took him to the seas off Iran, Yemen, the Black Sea, and in support of combat operations in Afghanistan. His ship staved off harassment from the Iranian and Russian warships, and his destroyer was front and center escorting aircraft carriers from threats to our naval aviators. USS The Sullivans also provided support for the Coast Guard in guarding strategic assets as part of Operation Enduring Freedom. After his distinguished service, Rod went on to earn his law degree via the GI Bill and served in the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department and with the U.S. Department of Commerce.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand for the tributed veterans here and for veterans everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, please stand as we welcome the boys and girls of Troop 419 presenting the colors. At this time, please welcome Gladys Fuentes, who's going to deliver tonight's invocation. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, remain standing. Please welcome to the stage Vietnam veteran and Staff Sergeant with the 376th Strategic Air Wing, Steve Albritton. Thank you to the Troop 419 for bringing the colors. Hello, America. Welcome. Thanks for being here today. We have a very exciting show for you tonight. We have an excellent candidate for U.S. House District 21. His name is Dorilas, and we have State Representative from District 105, David Borrero. Let's roll.
You're watching the Enemy of Apathy podcast, the official podcast of American Patriot Community. Introducing your guide. He's a constitutionalist, a conversationalist, a concerned citizen. He's a husband, a father of three. The executive director of APC, Marcos Sendon.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Happy Veterans Day to everybody. Folks, this is a special day. We honor the service of all men and women of this republic that served in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, and in the new Space Force. Let's not forget them. Folks, this is a very special meeting, not just for Veterans Day, but events, things that have happened, things that occurred, have transpired since the last time we got together. If you recall, the last time we got together, we were putting out a call to citizens to take action, to become active and involved. Folks, let me tell you something. Across this land, maybe not just because of APC's call, but because of events on the ground and things that have happened, results have been obtained. How do I say that? And with what authority do I say that? Very simple. I'm sure you all know what happened in Virginia. In Virginia, there was an earthquake. An earthquake because concerned parents, citizens, ordinary individuals saw what was going on. They saw the peril that their children were under. They saw what was happening to their country, what was happening to everything around them. And what did they do? They spoke decisively. They were motivated. People that had never even gotten involved, people that had never voted before, people that had never really considered activism in any way, shape, or form. They came out and they spoke. They were decisive. And you know what? Results were obtained. This is absolute proof that not just in Virginia, but all across this land, the tidal wave that's about to occur next year is not just going to be cataclysmic, but it could be that much bigger. The more people get involved, the more they activate themselves, the more they say to themselves, this is our republic. And we're not going to stand for the left and for Marxism and for socialism to come take away our freedoms. We're not going to stand for that. So last time, I gave you 3 buzzwords. Silence is acceptance. But this time, I'm going to give you just one. That word is enough. That word is enough. We've had enough of this soft tyranny that they're trying to invoke upon us. We've had enough of pitting people against each other. We've had enough of this so-called, what's it called, Build Back Better? All Joe's done is build back the Taliban. That's all he's done up to now. Okay? Build Back Better? No, thank you. We want no part of it. But it's only going to happen the louder we speak up, the more frequently we do so. And folks, we cannot, under any circumstances, be intimidated. And what does that mean? That means, like I said in the last meeting, raising your voice and putting a stop to it in all the accepted ways. We are lovers of the Constitution. We are lovers of our founding documents, of the history of this country. Like I said before, good and bad. We can't allow it to be rewritten. We can't allow it to be restated because that history, in the end, is what's going to guide us through this crisis. Think about it for a second. I'm a big World War II guy. When the United States went into World War II, we know now, years later, that we won the war. But folks, when we entered the war, results were not certain by any means. We were getting our butts kicked pretty much everywhere until we finally did the turnaround at Midway, until we finally did the turnaround in North Africa, until General Patton finally took over and started driving until we started getting our forces together in Europe. It was a long, hard battle. 55 million people lost their lives during that conflict, but in the end, tyranny was defeated and freedom triumphed. Ladies and gentlemen, in view of the expense of blood and treasure back then, it behooves us now to not dishonor their memory. I keep saying this over and over again because I reflect very much on the sacrifice that's been made. I reflect on the sacrifices that veterans make. I'm very sensitive to it. I'm very conscious of it because I don't want it to be lost on anybody and on anybody that I speak to and people that I interact with. Because, folks, it matters. It matters to those who've answered the call. It matters to those who honor those that answered the call. It matters to every citizen in this country. And it should matter to you because this is the last bastion of freedom on earth. Nowhere else can you see what we see here. Nowhere else on earth. Nowhere else on earth are people clamoring to come over here, to be a part of the American experience, to be part of the American dream, to taste what American exceptionalism is all about. That is something that most people on this planet only wish they had. We have it. Do we lose it? Always remember that warning that Benjamin Franklin put out, a republic, if you can keep it. Can we? The answer is yes. Because like I said before, enough. Enough is enough. We're going to draw that line in the sand and they're not going to go past that because we are not going to allow them to silence us any further. Okay? Tonight, we have some excellent speakers that are going to be before you. One of them in particular, from the first time I saw this gentleman months ago on Fox and Friends, I saw to myself, you know what? I said to myself, this guy has some, wow. I started researching and I started looking into his history, and you know what? The gentleman is a personification of the American dream, of what we all pursue in this country. We're very excited he's going to be here tonight. He's going to tell you a story. I'm not going to take any of his thunder away, but I just wanted to tell you how very excited we are that he's here tonight with us, because it's people like Rod, it's people like David that stand up and make this republic what it is. David Borrero, our second guest tonight, he is a freshman state representative who's really fought the battle. This guy has stood up for conservative values and principles to the point where they're trying to cancel his initiatives because the rhinos in the state Senate and the state House don't think they should be passed. Well, you know what? That's not going to happen. He's going to be here tonight. We're going to go over everything that's been gone on before, what he intends to do in the next term, how he can be reelected, and how we can make sure that the State House reflects our values, how the State House and the State Senate reflects what we want our elected representatives to do in our name. This is the key, folks. Those representatives are doing our bidding for us. This is why it's so critically important that forums like this have the ability to provide the candidate face to face, so there's no soundbite that you hear exclusively. It's very important that you get to ask him the direct questions. That's not scripted. That's not prepared. Remember how Hillary, once upon a time, before a debate, they gave her all the questions so she can rehearse them? Because there's no way in heck that she can stand up to the light of day and actually take an improvised question and have to answer outside the script. The scripts here do not exist. That's the beauty of forums like this and forums everywhere that are going on around the country, is that we are going to know who portends to represent us. We're going to know who is going to be doing the bidding in our name, and we're going to throw our support behind the people that truly represent the values and principles that we advocate, that we fought so hard for, and that so much blood has been shed for. Let me tell you something. Right now, there was elections in Dade County. And in fact, there's a runoff election next week. Did any of you know that? Have you heard about that? There's a runoff election for Hialeah City Council in Group 6 and Group 7. In fact, one of those candidates to the runoff is here tonight with us. In fact, Mylene, why don't you come up here real quick and tell us a few words about your runoff election. Folks, Mylene Villalonga, she is a candidate for Hialeah Group 7. Please welcome her.
Hi, good evening. Happy Veterans Day. My name is Mylene Villalonga. I'm going for the Hialeah runoff for Group 7. But before I got to decide that and became any of that or think that I would be there, I was just sitting there in the audience just like you. I came to an APC meeting. I saw a lot of very amazing speeches, motivational speakers. It gave me the courage to stand up and do something. I have my family here with me, and they're very important. I came here as a concerned citizen, as a concerned parent, and I say I had to take part in saving my nation and the future of my children, and that's why I decided to run. There's a lot of work to do in the city of Hialeah and in every city in the U.S. We know that. We know the struggles. I live in the city. I know how much the water is costing. I know the problem that we have with our police force. I know everything that is happening because I suffered as well. That's why I'm here. That's why I want to be a voice for the people. And I know we have a lot of work to do. But one of the first things I want to do once I get there is this. I want to give the people the power back to be a voice for them and for them to have a voice in every decision taken. I want them to attend to the council meetings. I want them to get involved in the school board meetings because it is important, because it's the future. And if we are not there, if we don't say anything, we can't change anything. It is very important for them to know that the elected officials, we work for them and not the other way around. We have to be there to serve our people, and they have to hold accountable whoever is not doing their job. And every questions and everything, they have to be present. And I want them to have a voice. I'm there. This is the same thing I want to take back to my city. We don't have this kind of reunions, patriotism and everything. So this is a great way to start. And I want to thank you, Marcos, and everybody here for the opportunity. You feel free to ask me any questions. I'm just a simple, concerned citizen that I want to do something. I want to do good for my family and for the future of every kids. There's a lot of things going on in education. I've been participating in school board meetings, and it's really concerning what I've been seeing around. A lot of parents have no idea. And I know that the local government doesn't give a lot of involvement when it comes to education, but it shouldn't be like that, because the kids in our city, they go to those schools in the city, and we need to know what kind of classes are they getting, what's in their books. I mean, I have a lot of complaints and a lot of parents coming to me, even teachers coming to me to show me what's in those books. My daughters, they were part of the public school system. I had to take them out. They made my life very difficult because I was the only parent standing up for them, for not wearing a mask. My children didn't wear a mask because that was my choice, because the law says that there's no mandates in Florida. Why would I put a mandate on my own just to satisfy, Carvalho and all the people? No, it shouldn't be like that. It should be everybody's responsibility. And I want to also thank my daughters one more time, because they were very brave, because they're little and they had to stand. The only ones different in the whole schools were they. And I do this because tomorrow, I have to do this because I have a commitment for my family and for my country, which I love. And if I don't do this today, I won't be able to look at their face tomorrow and say, well, I know things were wrong and I didn't do anything to save it. I didn't do anything to speak up. I'd rather fight today for them so that they don't have to fight tomorrow. And that's my message. And thank you so much. And if you have any questions, I'll be around and talking to you.
Thank you, Mylene. Thank you, Mylene. Folks, Mylene is a great example because, it doesn't have to be federal office. It could be a state office. It could be a local office. The granular level is more important now than ever. Why is it more important? Because that's where the rubber hits the road. And like I said in the last meeting, here, all around us here, by the interaction that we have, by getting people inspired to be able to run for office. Right now, you see all the conflicts in school boards and people trying to bring their voice through and voice their concern, and it's being ignored. Folks, the solution is actually replace the school board. If the school board does not listen to the parents' concerns, then we have to have people that are active and involved and replace them. That's what elections are for. And that's why APC, one of APC's missions, is to be able to help people that want to run for office, people that want to take the next step, no matter what level that might be, so they can go ahead and run and be a public servant and be that kind of person that takes on leadership, takes on the role of doing these kinds of things. Otherwise, we're just going to get the same tired people in the same tired roles producing the same results. That old saying is not a platitude, folks. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different outcome. That's not just a platitude. That's absolute reality. This is why at the federal level, everyone's been clamoring for what? Term limits. Term limits, because the intent of the Constitution was not to have lifetime politicians. The intent of the Constitution was to have citizen representation, that they would go represent their communities and then go back to their lives and continue. Article 5, that's a fact. This is what the intent of the Constitution is. And as followers and lovers of the Constitution, this is what we advocate for. Folks, I mentioned before the Virginia election. In fact, we were so overjoyed at the grassroots uprising that was in Virginia that we actually crafted a letter which we're sending tomorrow to the governor-elect, to the lieutenant governor-elect, and to the attorney general-elect. We want to show them support. We want to show them our gratitude that they took on the task of being that wave. And to that, one of our board members, Henry Pedroso, the eloquence of his pen is mighty, folks. He crafted a letter in the name of APC, and I want to invite him up here so he can read that letter, and you can share what we are telling those elected officials.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for all coming, and especially to any veterans in the audience. I want to please thank you for your service. And, I think I'm not the only one here feeling the gratitude. I put this letter together after November 2nd. And the reason I put it together is pretty obvious. We're fed up. We're tired of the abuse of our rights, of our human decency. When Terry McAuliffe went up and said that parents had no right to have any input on the education of their children, I found it appalling. I think we all did. And the day that the election took place, to see the victory by Glenn Youngkin, Lieutenant Governor Sears, and Lieutenant Governor-elect Miyares, a Cuban American, it was like manna from heaven. So I put this letter together, and if you'll beg my indulgence, I'm sorry, I beg your indulgence. I'd like to read it to you and share it with you. Dear Governor-elect Youngkin, Lieutenant Governor-elect Sears, and Attorney General-elect Miyares, congratulations and best wishes on a hard-fought, well-deserved, and desperately needed victory for the leadership of the great state of Virginia. The three of you exemplify the unshakable character and spirit that your state and this nation were founded upon, and we at the American Patriot community wish to express our heartfelt best wishes for your success as you stand at the threshold of a new day in Virginia. APC was formed out of a deep-seated love for our free state of Florida and the United States of America, her founding principles, her traditional Judeo-Christian values, along with a sense of outrage and urgency over the fundamental transformation that the left-wing secular progressives are trying to foist upon us, especially upon our children. From mask and vaccine mandates to the ideological abduction of the hearts and minds of the most innocent among us, our country is under assault. We at the American Patriot community stand firm with you to preserve the great American experiment. Thank you on behalf of APC and a grateful nation. E pluribus unum. Thank you.
Henry, thank you. Thank you for that. Henry, again, the eloquence of your pen is magnificent. So, folks, again, I implore you, for example, another place where you can go to is the local REC. The local REC is in need of good people. So one good place to start is to go ahead and become a committee man, become a committee woman at the REC. Contact Brandon Diaz. Brandon Diaz is here. Senor? Brandon Diaz is here. He'll be able to give you information, but start serving, even if it's just there. Become active, become involved, become elected, become concerned, and I guarantee you that this time next year, APC is going to host a very special event. You know what that event is? You're going to like this. It's called the Pelosi Pink Slip Party. We're going to be hosting it here on the roof of this museum, which, by the way, this museum, which is a historic and cultural icon, it has in this vestibule over here a tribute to the veterans of the Bay of Pigs, of Brigade 2506, and all their bravery and sacrifice on that day on April 17, 1961. I implore you to visit this museum, see all the freedom, all the history that's here, and then ponder to yourself the desperation needed to put your mother, your father, your child, your grandson on a rubber inner tube and brave the Florida Straits. People north of Palm Beach really don't get the import of this. But think of the desperation it requires to do that, knowing that 5 out of 6 of those journeys either drown or get eaten by the sharks. All to come to this land, to this republic, to the United States of America, which we will not let perish. Folks, we're going to bring on our first speaker. Thank you very much, and we'll be right back. American Patriot Community is forming activity committees now. We need you to step forward and contribute your time and talents. We're forming the School Board Committee, the Second Amendment Task Force, and the Media Action Committee. Have an idea for another action group? Then step forward and we'll bring together patriots to populate them. If you're not registered with APC, go to our website, americanpc.org, and sign up today. Folks, it's time for our first guest tonight. This gentleman has an amazing story to tell. I am not going to spoil it for you. I'm just going to let him do the talking. This person is very special indeed. And when we first met tonight, I told him, Rod, I want you to go up there and let them see what I see. Because what I see is a very special man who grew up in the Navy, according to his own testimony, and he is ready to take on another dimension of his public service. Folks, please give a warm American Patriot Community welcome to Mr. Rod Dorilas, candidate for U.S. House District 21. Knock him out, sir.
Well, good evening. Good evening. Good evening indeed. I want to say thank you for being here. It's very special that I get the opportunity to speak to you all on Veterans Day, a day that I think it's special to not only me, but many others, I believe, in the crowd. Again, my name is Dorilas, and I'm running for Congress up in Florida's 21st Congressional District, and that's in Palm Beach County, just a little bit north of here. But I'm running because, frankly, yes, it is Trump's county. But I'm running because, frankly, if you haven't gotten the message already from Marcus, America is at crossroad. A lot of the freedoms that we've enjoyed are under assault. We see many folks, I won't say folks, the government usurping the powers that was given to the people. You know, our founding fathers of this country provided us a brilliant document that outlines inalienable rights that were given to us, not by any government or man, but by God. It's true. And so I want to say that much of the rights that we're enjoying are being taken away. I want to say that many of us who have served have fought for the freedoms that we enjoy that makes America what it is today. Whether it's losing our family, kids, our faith, our country, I can't stand idly by while that's going on. And so just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm a Navy combat veteran. I served 6 years. 6 years in 3 tours overseas, 2 of which were in the Middle East. A third was in the Mediterranean in the 6th Fleet, serving alongside the Israeli Defense Forces in Israel. But most of my job was provided to, the purpose of me being there was to provide a sanctuary or defense to Israel, because our ship was outfitted with what we call BMD, ballistic missile defense. And I was a Tomahawk technician. I launched missiles. I made things go boom. But the threat of Iran was so much that I had to keep getting sent out there to protect Israel, one of our greatest allies. And it pains me to see this administration and those on the left who seek to push us away and get closer to people who would do harm to us. I'm also a first-generation American, son of Haitian immigrants. My parents, I'll tell you a little bit about my parents, but I'm also a lawyer. I'm also a business owner, small business owner. And I'll tell you what, I'm also a proud Trump administration official. I served in the Department of Commerce. I served in the White House. I've served in the Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. I'll tell you what, if you're not afraid of big government, you should be. I've seen, just in the time that President Trump was in, I've seen people, whether it's the systematic democratic approach to derailing our ability to practice our faith, whether it's religious liberty, whether it's to speak freely. I've seen it. We've launched lawsuits, whether on school campuses, whether to ensure that municipalities, cities weren't purposely denying permits to churches to go ahead and renovate their institution. I will tell you a little bit about my parents, because I think my parents' story resonates with me. It is why I do what I do. I think their story defines who I am today. They immigrated from Haiti, a country, as you know, that provides little to no economic incentives to their people. They came here on a working visa to pick fruits and vegetables off the farm fields here in Florida, I believe in Miami, and also the west side of Palm Beach. They picked fruits and vegetables, but life wasn't as easy. They were homeless. They slept in their cars. They slept in their church's attic, believe it or not. They sought refuge there. But they didn't let those moments define who they were. They persevered. They kept their heads low. They were happy. They were grateful to God, to our country, because they knew that they had an opportunity that lay before them to not only better their lives, but the lives of their future kids. And so they went on to start their own small business, to own a small restaurant, which was good enough for them then to raise 4 children, all of whom have gone on to become lawyers, doctors, and chemical engineers. And it's amazing. I mean, people will tell you otherwise. They'll tell you you cannot make it here. And it's not only folks of the Caucasian race. It's sad that Black children will tell other children that you could not wear the American flag anymore. My little brother, Alex, was accosted at school. He's still in high school, he's 17, and he's up in Montverde Academy up in Montverde, Florida. And these students come up to him and tell him, we were in the moment where schools were forcing kids to wear masks. So fine, he wears a mask, but he puts the American flag on it, and kids come up to him and say, hey, well, I'll qualify that. Not only kids, but kids of minority stature. Came up to him and told him, you should not be wearing that. You're Black, that's racist. You should remove this. You're part of the problem. And he calls me and tells me, Rod, why am I being picked on? Why am I being told I should take this off? And I had to sit there and explain to him. I tried to do it calmly, but I was very colorful. I'll tell you that. I was very colorful with my words. I was very upset. I told him, you don't listen to them. You don't listen to them. This country has provided us so much. In less than one lifetime, my parents' lifetime, they immigrated here in 1985. They went from homelessness to seeing their kids doing well, and one to stand before you to tell you that he's contesting for a United States congressional seat. And so I want to ensure that the American dream stays alive and well for the next generation. We must ensure that that happens, not only for myself, my brother, but for our kids, our grandchildren, frankly. I want to tell you that we have a short time to change this, and that's in 2022. We have many folks who are pushing the socialist Marxist ideology that seeks to usurp the power of the people, that seeks to, frankly, break down everything that we know that holds up the American principles and values. There's a purpose behind it. I won't bore you to death because I know that some of you know this very much. But we need fighters in Congress, at the local level, at the state level, that will fight to ensure not only that we fight against socialism or Marxism, that will also fight against big tech. We all know what the tyranny what big tech is doing, big government, and also big business. We need fighters who will ensure that the opportunities, the economic policies from the previous administration, President Trump's successful policies, are re-implemented and even increased tenfold. And on top of that, lastly, and most importantly, we need fighters who understand that it's not only for our sake, it's for the next generation. And so with that, I'll leave that to Marcus. And Marcus, you got a wonderful crowd here that understands that the United States and their kids, the kids that are growing up here, are subjected to harmful rhetoric, brainwashing, and we need fighters at the school board. I'm not sure if you've been telling folks that the school board is very, very, very important. In Palm Beach County alone, you probably heard this with all of the news, but Palm Beach County is one that fights and constantly push back against the governor's objectives or agendas. So again, thanks again. My name is Rod Dorilas. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon, yeah. Rod, this is something I've been very much looking forward to because you have such an amazing story. You have such an amazing perspective. And I think it's very inspiring because I can't help but look at what your family struggled through and see their story. And I can't help but say, wow, this is a glorious story, much like Winston Sears' story up in Virginia. We have something just like that here, a personification of that dream. People that came from and uprooted their entire existence to come to this country and be able to realize what they were just hoping someday could be possible, but knew they couldn't do it in their native land. And they came over here and they accomplished this. I'm so very inspired by your story, and I'm so happy that you're running for this office. So with that in mind, in the last in the last meeting that we had, I'd like to put a hypothetical in candidates to see how they respond. I'll do the same thing with you. And believe me, this hypothetical is one that I hope and pray is the case. So we're in January of 2023.
Okay.
And Congressman Dorilas is about to be inaugurated. He's about to put his hand on the good book and take the oath. What are Congressman Dorilas' priority platform or issues that are going to make a difference in District 21?
That's a good question, and I hope that scenario comes true, not only for my sake, but like, again, the future of our country. Priorities would be, for sure, one would be the economy. The economic opportunities that were provided to my family, to my mom, my dad, to allow us to be where we're at today, needs to be protected. It needs some overhauling in some key areas, but economic policies that gives small businesses, people who have little to nothing to their name, but able to make everything from sowing up seeds and then making that turn into a huge harvest. And now let me give you an example. Jeff Bezos. I don't like to mention him too much, but he is a perfect example of someone who, he's Cuban American, I believe.
Yes, that's correct.
And he came here, or his grandfather, right?
His grandfather. His stepfather.
Okay. But it was the United States' economic ability to provide him an opportunity to be what he is today, essentially one of the richest men in the world. I would like to see him stand up more on American principles that protected and provided what he has for today.
Absolutely.
But it's a great example of what the United States can do for anyone. But at least for myself, the economy is going to be one. It's going to be our civil rights issues, whether it's free speech, because I care so much about that. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. People should be able to speak and speak freely. That is the way that the republic was supposed to be designed.
Amen.
So that you can be protected and not be. A lot of folks right now don't realize that the arm of the United States government, maybe you haven't paid attention, have been essentially naming people as enemies of the state in our own country.
That's disgraceful.
And I've seen how powerful the government can be, the resources that they have at their disposal, how secretive they could be, how manipulative they are. And so we did a lot of cutting of red tape, whether it's on the economic side, but also of the bad behaviors that we saw through previous administrations. This is going back even past the Bush administration. But we have to be wary of that. Civil rights, economic policies, and then lastly, I would say pushing back, and I hope that big tech's not listening too much, but it's big tech and big government in general. Antitrust legislation should be dusted off and looked into, because I think big tech has become too tyrannical. We have 5 or 6 man-childs in Silicon Valley who are essentially operating as oligarchs now and taking away our ability to speak on certain mediums. And it takes away from the American democratic principles that we all need to ensure that our kids are going to have to enjoy.
So that's very interesting, because, there was kind of like a push, then it kind of subsided, but there was a push to be able to repeal the protections that big tech company have,
Right.
because what they do is they hide behind the fact that they're a private company. And that allows them to be able to practice the kind of censoring they're doing right now. I know many people that just for simply stating a simple opinion, like, well, I'm for vaccines, but I just don't think it's right for me. And then all of a sudden they censor them and quiet them. And not only that, but then they dox them. They do all sorts of things to them. And the companies hide behind the fact that they're the ultimate arbiters, when the ultimate arbiter should be the Constitution, not the big tech companies. That's something I assume that you're going to be pushing for.
So yes, I would be looking to either completely overhaul Section 230, which provides them protections like you're mentioning, and look at ways that we understand that medical tyranny that's going on right now, what you're alluding to, the medical tyranny is whether you're for the vaccine or not. you should have the ability to choose. It's simple as that.
Amen.
And so folks are, the government and big tech are colluding essentially to peddle their policies, their agenda, to ensure that no one speaks up to a point where it becomes a movement where people can, the people can use their power and vote people out and fight back. And so once that's happening, I mean, I'm a big guy, I'm a big believer in free markets, right? I want to adhere to that as possible, free markets. But when you are going purposely against the very people that make you rich, that gives you the ability to sit up there in Silicon Valley and enjoy those yachts, then my friend, I'm sorry, we're going to have to look at what we've done with the laws that are protecting you.
Absolutely. With regards to financial incentives, like for example, like in small businesses, the Build Back Better plan, I mean, that aberration, I mean, that thing is just an atrocity. Uncle Joe, that's what I like to call him. He likes to say, well, this is not going to cost you anything because it's already paid for. Yeah, it's paid for by the taxes they're going to slap on pretty much everybody and everything. I liken it to, like, for example, when you're going to go to that big fancy restaurant and you order that steak, just because you paid for it doesn't mean it's not going to cost you anything. It costs you the money out of your pocket. By the same token, those taxes are going to cost us big time. But not just in terms of taxes, but it's the regulations that are being foisted upon us that are an economic encumbrance, and that ultimately is just as saddling as the taxes that they're trying to put on. I remember when Donald Trump took office, he revolutionized that because he rolled back regulations in all sectors of the economy. And the result was an economic boom, the likes we haven't seen in many years. Is that the kind of economic policy in terms of regulations? Speak to that.
Absolutely. So I had the pleasure of serving one of the greatest presidents, at least in my lifetime, when it comes to the economy, who understood what the people needed to thrive, right? You have regulation on top of regulation on top of regulations where small businesses could not afford to have attorneys go and fight through all this red tape to get them where they need to be. And so I was appointed to provide counsel to the Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross. And part of my job was to ensure that I'm giving the legal eyes, the legal lens to what the agenda of the Trump administration wanted to do with the economy, whether it was rolling back the high taxes on certain industries that gives us the ability to live comfortable lives, whether it's in the real estate business, whether it's providing, ensuring that the China is not railroading our objectives here with our small businesses, whether it's China who militarily or economically, I'm talking, because the Commerce Department is essentially a great agency within the reach of the U.S. government that allows us to push at the highest levels agendas that fights back not only on the national security front, but on the domestic. And so President Trump understood. He provided us a directive, understood that taxes, when they were cut to at the proper levels, and incentives that were given to certain industries, that would get down to the lowest level of our economic system, and provide enough opportunity. And that's what we saw. We saw economic opportunity zones. If you remember that with Tim Scott in the White House.
Sure do.
We provided abilities to incentivize local governments to bring in investors who would go ahead and ensure that there's job creations. We saw some of the lowest unemployment rates for African Americans in the likes of at least 30 years.
I think they were almost historic, I believe.
Yes, he was very, very adamant about that. He knew he wanted, and that's a great point I wanted to actually, before I continue to finish what I was going to say. The former president understood that the Republican Party, the more conservative party, had to fight for the trust of the people, had to fight for the trust of minorities. And you saw what? He went out and he ensured that he gave things to them that they understood were in their best interest. The other party, on the other hand, I won't name them, but they take for granted our votes And now they're seeing their the support that within those communities roll back dramatically, and now they're freaking out. They're freaking out, and we had it right. The economy is what everyone, at the majority of the time, is going to resonate with. So,
Absolutely. In fact, there's a great saying that it's better and more compassionate to teach a man to fish rather than give him a fish.
that's right.
Which I believe wholeheartedly. Historically, I believe that other party that we're not going to mention here, we're not going to give them any airtime. I believe in my heart that they subscribed and submitted people, especially minorities, to something as cruel as the yoke that they broke in the 19th century. I'm talking about slavery historically, but now I'm talking about institutional slavery. And what does that mean? That means when you are bound by the government, when the government is the sunrise and the sunset of your existence, when you depend on a government check, not the sweat of your brow, you have no incentive to better yourself. You have no incentive to become a better human being to yourself, to your family, to your children. I find that the conservative message, which is why I'm so very excited about your candidacy, is actually the one that promotes those types of values of family, of success, of freedom, of self-sufficiency, of accomplishment. And I know this because I speak to many people from all walks of life. And it doesn't matter what color they are, it doesn't matter what nationality they are, they all want to be successful. They all want to provide for their family. And rich doesn't necessarily mean multi-millions. Rich can be that I have a home that through the sweat of my brow, I've provided my family, and we are content, we are happy. One party, it seems to me, is content with dividing people and letting them sit in their comfortable little government check life, while the conservatives and Republicans are those concerned with actually giving people the opportunity to be able to thrive. And that's one of the great reasons why I'm so excited about your candidacy, because I think it's about time that we as conservatives stop pushing back on this concept, the old concept, racist, sexist, bigoted, homophobe, racist, sexist, bigoted, homophobe. Because you know what, at the end of the day, there are so many African Americans that if you speak to them, they're conservatives. You listen to their values, they're conservatives. In their heart, they follow that. But the message is just not there. And Rod, I think you are the harbinger of that message, which is why I was so very excited to have you here tonight, because I think you are the type of breakthrough candidate like Winsome Sears in Virginia was, that she was able to say, listen, my color is incidental. My background is incidental. We are Americans.
Yes. Yes.
Forget the hyphen. We are Americans. We are of one creed. We are under one flag. And Rod, I just can't say. In fact, I'm going to open it up now for a Q&A for folks to ask you what they would like. But I, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here tonight, because I think that like we saw history in the making in every sense in Virginia, in District 21, and we're about to witness that same kind of history. Folks, a big hand for Mr. Dorilas of District 21. And what I want to do is, if there's anybody is there anybody that has a question for Mr. Dorilas? Great. Come on up here, sir. Here, Rod, you can take this one.
I'm very excited about your candidacy, so congratulations, and thank you for taking the time to run. But I have one question. This audience cannot vote you into Congress. So what kind of an electorate are you facing in that district, which I know may be changed by redistricting, but what kind of an electorate? And especially, I think Laura Loomer was the last Republican candidate. So how do you think, who are they, and how do you think you'll do?
Sure. So in Palm Beach County, I understand, unless you all move up to Palm Beach, I'd love to have you there. But right now, it leans what we call a D+8. It's Democrat leaning. I don't look too much into that. You saw what happened in Virginia. You also saw what happened last cycle here in your own home, your home city, Miami-Dade. There's 2 seats that were flipped. D+7 and a D+5. They were Democrat leaning, but you guys were able to flip that
That's right.
seat up in Palm Beach. It's a D+8. It leans Democrat. There's huge pockets of minorities that live there. You have huge pockets of Jewish communities that live there, but you have the redistricting, like the kind gentleman mentioned, that's going on that will change that up a little bit. We don't know what the exact makeup would be, but right as it stands right now, yes, Laura Loomer was the last conservative who, or last Republican to get the nomination. The last Republican to hold that seat was Representative Allen West. And since
An excellent man.
And since then, I think that since then, Lois Franco's been in office. She's been in power for about 40 years. Nothing has happened. Nothing's changed. People are feeling the lack of duty in her. She doesn't show up. She doesn't do anything besides vote 100% of the time with Nancy Pelosi. She votes 96% of the time with the likes of AOC. So how can you say and tell us in our face that you're a moderate or you're this and that, and you continue to vote along with your party's malicious bad intent? So we are actually very happy and enthused about what's going to happen in 2022. Virginia has given us, and everyone, I had donors and supporters calling me the day after telling me how much this is in reach. Probably it leans Republican now, to be honest, just to see the turnout from the Virginia election. And so I'm telling you folks that there is something brewing. There is something brewing. If you read Mark Levin's book, The American Marxism,
Great book.
that book sold, over 400, 500 copies within the first week. And I mean, who reads books nowadays, right? Typically conservatives, but you can see a lot of these books are being sold, but it's significant because there's something beneath us that's happening. People are fighting back. People are understanding. They might not come out and be vocal about it, but I can sense that people are going to show up and be very supportive come 2022 in November.
Rod, thank you very much. Once again, big hand, folks, for Rod Dorilas. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, our next guest is the man that is fighting the good fight. This man has wonderful conservative bona fides. He is, in fact, in our last meeting, if you recall, Mr. Anthony Sabatini said this gentleman was the third most conservative man next to the governor and himself. He is a person that has a sterling record of upholding conservative values and principles. We're very excited to have him here, folks. A warm American patriot community welcome to the state representative from District 105, David Borrero.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here with you guys this evening, and especially to share the stage over here with Rod, who is a veteran who has served. Honestly, just the fact that you've enrolled and served in our military is, you've done so much more than I ever could in my lifetime. And so I just thank you for your service to this country and for every veteran who has served. Thank you. Actually, one of my favorite lines and favorite scenes of all time, it's just so riveting. And every time I watch it, it just gets me, is from Saving Private Ryan. And that moment when Captain Miller looks at Private Ryan after so many of those troops died trying to search for him and to find him. And he looks at him with his dying words and his dying breath, and he tells him, "Earn this." He looks at him while he's right about to pass away, and he tells him, "Earn this." And those words really moved me, because we're standing on the sacrifices of thousands, hundreds of thousands who have given their lives and left their blood on foreign soil for the freedoms that we hold today. And I don't know if we truly value it and appreciate the freedoms and the values that we hold. We don't really see, in DC, they have the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, because they don't know, and we haven't captured all of the veterans and the soldiers who have given their lives to give us the freedoms that we hold today. And there are people around the world, even now, who wish they had just a glimpse and a fraction of the freedoms that we have today. So it's something to be appreciated. It's something to fight for, something to die for. And so thank you for all the veterans who have served today, and especially obviously those who have given their lives for the freedoms that we have. And that's what we're fighting for. That's what I'm fighting for. And I can tell you boldly today that Florida is absolutely fighting for freedom. Florida is fighting for freedom. I believe that we do have the greatest governor in the nation right now and the greatest leadership in our House and Senate, because we are fighting for conservative principles and we are fighting for freedom. Actually, as a matter of fact, on Monday, I will be making a long drive all the way to Tallahassee, where we will be entering into special session to be fighting and pushing back against these communistic style vaccine mandates that are coming from the Biden administration. And Governor DeSantis, yeah, it's so important. I mean, we are going into uncharted waters for the first time in this nation's history, where a government official can force individuals to inject foreign substances into their own bodies. It is unconstitutional, and Florida is fighting back. Yeah, absolutely. I haven't gotten more emails on any subject than on these unconstitutional vaccine mandates. And if you want to know the specifics of what this bill does, House Bill 1, there's House Bill 3, there's House Bill 5 and 7. In a nutshell, what our anti-vaccine mandate, because the legislature is not taking the position that we're anti-vaccine mandate, enforcing people to do something against their own will. And so what this bill does in House Bill 1 is it makes it illegal for an employer to mandate a vaccine unless there are these exceptions, very broad exceptions, which from what I've read are very easily to qualify for. So if you have a religious exemption, and if you have a sincerely held belief, you don't have to get the vaccine, no matter if your private employer is trying to mandate it. If you have a medical exemption, you don't have to get the vaccine. Okay. If you have immunity, you don't have to get the vaccine, even if your employer tried to mandate against you. If you use protective equipment, you don't have to get the vaccine. And if you test regular, you don't have to get the vaccine. So what we're telling employers is you can't force your employees to get vaccinated or fired against them. And if they try to retaliate against you, you can actually file a complaint against them. And any business with more than 100 employees will actually face civil penalties of $50,000 for every incident that this happens. So Florida is taking bold steps to protect your right to bodily autonomy. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud that we're setting the standard. And you've seen so many school boards retaliate with these lawless mask mandates against our children and forcing them to wear masks against the will of the parents. We are now outlawing any educational institution from mandating a mask on their children in Florida. So I'm very proud of that. We're pulling out of OSHA. We're setting up our own standards. And the governor has initiated a lawsuit along with our attorney general to fight against Biden's unconstitutional mandates. So we are fighting for freedom in Florida. Yeah. Absolutely. We're also fighting. I just this past week I refiled, and we announced it on November 7th. November 7th is actually Victims of Communism Day, where we memorialize all of the lives of those who have suffered as victims under communism. Over 100 million people. People don't realize this today. Over 100 million people have died under communist oppression since 1917, when the first communist government was established in Russia and Soviet Russia. And still to this day, even 1 in 5 people live under communism. And people are looking around the world and looking at the United States as the last bastion of freedom in the world. And they're asking themselves, is democracy and freedom going to prevail versus the communistic superpowers like in China, like in North Korea, like in Cuba, and its close cousin socialism, which has oppressed so many people? That's why it's so important that we fight back against tyranny. And I said this before, but tyranny is when the government excessively and the government controls people. But true democracy is when the people can control the government. And I find it ironic that the founding fathers, when they wrote the Constitution, and they did it in just a couple of months, they finished the founding documents to the greatest country in the history of the world. And they said themselves, this thing is not yet done. We need to write a Bill of Rights. And why did they do that? It's because they know that the government has this natural tendency, it's a disgusting tendency to usurp and take away from people as much as they are allowed to give them. And that's the grim reality, is that the government will take from you however much you allow them to take. And so what you guys are doing, what we are doing, what we're fighting for is so important. And we can't let an inch, because once you give away that inch, let me tell you, it is so difficult to get it back. And that's why it's so important to fight right now against these unconstitutional vaccine mandates. Because what happens tomorrow? What happens tomorrow when there's another flu breakout? What happens tomorrow when there's another national emergency? Will we lose our ability to practice our religion the way that we want to say what we want to say? Will the government be able to control the way that how we can live, where we can live, who's allowed in our homes, where we can go to school? You know, I had a friend who just he did the New York Marathon this past week, and he was saying, man, what a pain in the rear end it was to be in New York City, participate in that marathon. Everywhere you go, in every restaurant, I had to show my cell phone with a picture of my ID and a vaccine card showing that I was vaccinated. And if I didn't have it, they would kick me out and they wouldn't serve me. And it's disgusting to think that we can discriminate against people just because they don't want to get a vaccine, against a sincerely held belief. It's your personal medical choice, what you want to do with your own body. And it's insane to think that the very same people who advocate for abortion and women's body and women's choice are the same people who are saying that you don't have a right to do with what you want with your own body when it comes to your medical choices on vaccines. It is absolutely ridiculous. Such a catch-22. But I'm telling you that what we need today, look, I'm just a guy, okay? I'm just a guy. I'm just a 32-year-old guy, okay? I was born in Queens, New York, in the ghetto, okay? And I grew up in a very small town in Swansea, Massachusetts. I'm the son of Colombian immigrants. I'm just a guy. But what I can tell you is that I am ready and I am willing and I will tirelessly fight for freedom. That's all that it takes, is boldness. I'm a Christian, and I'm a firm believer that the Bible is the word of God. And one of my favorite verses is in Acts chapter 4, verse 13, where it says that the crowd, they looked at two of the disciples of Jesus, Peter and John. And it says when they looked at them, they saw their boldness, and they realized that they were uneducated and untrained men. And they realized that they had been with Jesus. And it just marks me that these two individuals were marked for their relationship to the most world-changing, radical, transformational individual throughout human history, the Son of God, because of their boldness. And it's something that you don't get because of your schooling, and something that you don't get through your education. It's something that comes from within, something that comes from within here. And I truly believe that what we're missing today in society is individuals who are moved by such a sense of fearlessness and boldness that come hell or high water, they are not moving from this line, and they are willing to fight and die for what they believe in. So my call to you and my call to America is to wake up and to realize that the government will take away any rights that the people is willing to give up, and to have boldness and to fight back and to set a new standard, because it is willing, we should be willing to die for it, and we should be willing to earn it. Thank you, guys.
Mr. Borrero, it is a great pleasure to have you here. I have long looked forward to this. We met a long time ago, and we didn't get to really converse that much, but I was relishing tonight because as impressed as I am with Rod, I'm impressed with you, sir, because you are not afraid. And by that, I mean you have the guts to go to the legislature and walk the way you talk. I can't tell you how many times people are just tired of somebody that goes and gets elected, and then all of a sudden they unzip that costume they had over themselves and they become somebody else. You have not done that. You are not doing that. You refuse to do that. You are who you say you are. And I know the initiatives that you put forth and that you were submarined just because there are rhinos in the House and in the Senate that did not want to take on your initiatives, which were worthwhile and would have benefited this state, because they just didn't see it philosophically the way you did and weren't unselfish enough to let that go and actually let something that was good for the people as they were elected for you to represent them. So with that in mind, this legislative session coming up now, many people were very much encouraged by it. What is the absolute cannot miss, must pass next week's legislative session? Is there a sign that it might be watered down? And if so, what can be done about not watering it down? Because in the past, like for example, with the social media bill, they watered it down and they didn't let it pass as strongly as Governor DeSantis wanted to. And I know that his initiative is strong, but what will you do in this legislative session to make sure that what they want to accomplish, such as DeSantis's goals, is in fact done?
Well, okay. All right. So first of all, let me just say this. I want to honor our House Speaker, Chris Sprowls, and I want to honor our Senate President, Wilton Simpson, and our Governor, Ron DeSantis, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Outstanding.
If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't even be considering fighting against these unconstitutional Biden vaccine mandates. We have 3 individuals with good principles who are willing to have this conversation and begin to fight back against these vaccine mandates. Okay, that's number 1. Okay. Number 2, I will say that legislation can always be made better. Absolutely, it can always be made better. But what we have is a great starting point to making sure that individuals, and we don't set the precedent, we don't set the standard where the government can begin to force individuals to doing things that they do not consent to. This has and always will be a government that governs with the consent of the people. That is the standard that we are setting.
Exactly.
And that is the standard that we are upholding next week. That's what the legislation says, okay? Now, I will say this. I truly believe that your right to bodily autonomy is a constitutional right, and it should never be infringed upon. Okay, so to that extent, this legislation it is fantastic. It is great. I think it like I said, it sets the standard against unconstitutional vaccine mandates. But I will say that if we were to move even more in a greater direction for protection of this constitutional right, then what I would encourage individuals is to express your view that there should be absolutely no vaccine mandates in the private sector, okay, of any whatsoever. Now, I think this legislation, just like all the legislation that's currently pending, even right now with these legal challenges, which Governor DeSantis and so many other states have initiated, it is going to ultimately end in judicial precedent with case law, with legal challenges, okay? But nevertheless, if you want to fight for I would say 2 things. 1, thank your legislators, thank your conservative Republican leadership for moving forward these 4 House bills that are right now set on the agenda for special session.
Those,
okay?
just for everybody to be able to take note, which are those 4 again?
That's House Bill 1, 3, 5, and 7. Okay.
House Bills 1, 3, 5, and 7. Make
Okay.
note of that, folks.
Right. They all go together, okay, to fight back against Biden's unconstitutional vaccine mandates, okay? They fight back against these mask mandates, and they also fight back against any educational institution from requiring their students to be vaccinated.
Outstanding.
So you can't, I mean, it is great legislation, okay? Now, I would be willing to say that I'm inclined to say absolutely no vaccine mandates. But what this legislation does, okay, is it allows employers to set the standard how they want for their own businesses, which is a free market perspective. And I can see and I can understand and I can appreciate that policy decision.
I think that's an important distinction because we are free market people after all. But what we don't want is to have a government come and tell everybody what to do and how they're supposed to do it. I mean, because you know how it's going to be usurped. You know how it's going to be perverted. They're going to come and say that, oh, you're an anti-vax person. And when I think just the opposite. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that opposes anybody getting a vaccine if they think it's right for them. I think what they do oppose is the imposition of somebody else's will, not because it's actually scientifically backed or because there's anything that is actually beneficial to them per se. It's just because they're trying to exert an authoritarian mandate that they just want to impose because, let's be honest here, the coronavirus crisis, while very real and people have died tragically, it's been taken advantage of by ruthless politicians to be able to enforce their agendas and be able to hide behind a national emergency in order to be able to foist violations of rights, of worship, of everything else to their constituents. I'm very, very happy that this legislative session is called. And what I would like to elaborate on for everybody out there that is in support of this, and I'll tell you, there are very, very many. What can they do as citizens now that this session is coming up to be able to help buttress legislators like yourself that are taking the fight where it has to be done? What can the citizens right now do in support of this legislative session?
Well, it's like I was saying, number one is call your legislator, tell them to vote for this bill. These are 4 good bills, okay? These are bills that are setting a new standard that the government cannot force individuals from being vaccinated against their will. I want to make sure that we understand how crucial and how important this is. This is big stuff, okay? We want to make sure that the government cannot force individuals to do something against their own will with their bodies. That is huge. That is very, very important. Well, I will say, look, we as legislators, and I want to first of all share with you. Thank you for sharing that. I can certainly appreciate what you're sharing. There is certainly a difficult balance between upholding constitutional rights and preventing the government from controlling businesses. Okay. There's a difficult balance to strike if you are truly a free market, thinker, okay? Now, if you ask me, should any business be able to force an individual to take a vaccine? I would say no, under any circumstance. I agree with you wholeheartedly, okay? Now, I can also understand from a free market perspective why the government shouldn't force a business to take a particular stance on how they want to run their business.
Which, by the way, that thought that you have, hold that thought a second because we're going to go into Q&A in a moment. And what I want is to hold it until then because I'll give you the mic so it comes out everywhere. It's recorded, and to since we're streaming worldwide, we want to be able to have the audience listen to the question that you have so everything is taken in context and the full value of what you're asking is told to everybody.
I think the way that you think, okay, absolutely. I don't want to dissuade you from, your argument and what you're advocating for. I think what you're advocating for and what you're saying is absolutely right, and it's true, okay? But I first want to say this is because, so many times we look at a policy and individuals, they label elected officials as rhinos without fully understanding the framework. And I think number one is we first should be appreciative of our governor's leadership, and the very fact that we're saying is that the government cannot, under no circumstance, force an individual to get this vaccine. That is huge, because what that does is it prevents Joe Biden from Washington, D.C., mandating you as a small business owner and as an employee from being forced to take this corona vaccine. That is unconscionable, in my opinion. That's why I said that this is good legislation. Now, number two, this House Bill 1, it has about 5 key exceptions which you should be able to qualify for, will qualify for, to make it easy to basically essentially say, I as an employee opt out of getting this vaccine. And I'll say it and I'll repeat it again because it is important. Number one, a medical exemption. If you have a medical exemption, a bona fide medical exception, you can tell your employer, I'm not going to get this vaccine. And if you try to force me to, because of my medical exemption, despite my medical exemption, you're going to be sued about $50,000. If it's a business with less than 100 employees, it's $10,000 per violation. Number two, it protects the sacred right of your religious freedom. If you have a sincerely held belief that this vaccine you should not be getting, you can submit that form and they have to give you an exemption of your employer, which, by the way, you can walk away from and go to another business. It's called the free market. Number three. Excellent. I agree with you. And no business should. No business should. I agree with you.
Before you keep going, please just let me, I don't want to stop you from saying what you want to say. Give me a second because we're going to open it for Q&A so you can have a microphone. Everybody can hear you here and everybody can hear you in the streaming audience as well. Just give me just a couple more minutes and I'm going to give you the mic first so you can continue asking that question. Just keep it there because we're going to get you heard.
These are all good questions, by the way. I'm not going to run away from a tough question, and I welcome these questions, and these are exactly the same questions that you need to be asking all of your elected officials, all your state representatives, and all your state senators. I just want to say that.
Okay, so listen, since we're on this very hot topic, I'm going to cut my questions with you short because I think there are important questions we're going to address out there. Ed or Henry, can you please take this mic over there so the gentleman or anybody interested can ask Representative Borrero a question? See, because what I wanted is for your question to be on the record so everybody can understand it and hear it. And I think that you should have the absolute right to ask it, by the way. So with that, please go right ahead.
Well, sir, it's really not a question. It's a statement. The statement is we have laws against slavery, and no legislation can violate those laws. So whether you're a business owner or an employee, it doesn't matter. No company, no business, no government can force you to do something against your will. It's just a statement. So this legislation has flaws, and you need to fix it because I can't back it up like this. You know, I can't back it up. Part of it, yes, but aren't we a little sick and tired of half-truths? Aren't we sick and tired of having to deal with the lesser of two evils?
Okay, let's give the representative a chance to answer that. Go ahead, sir.
My recommendation is, also, first of all, I'll say this. I agree with you 110%. And I advocate almost every day for exactly what you are saying. I would say this, if this legislation can be improved by essentially saying that no business under any circumstance, even given certain exceptions, can mandate, require a vaccine as a condition of employment, I would advocate for that policy to prevent any mandate as a condition of employment. You cannot fire, you cannot hire based on vaccination status, you cannot discriminate. I agree with you 110%. Now, that being the case, which obviously you strongly believe, call your legislator and humbly tell him, number one, thank you, number one, for having this conversation, because we should be respectful when we go about this, okay? Number two, this legislation, we can make it better. How do we make it better? From saying that no business can require a vaccination from their employees, period, okay? That's what, yeah.
We have another question here.
Yes, just one comment. First of all, I can't really see why something which is unconstitutional for the government is not equally unconstitutional for an employer. That's my first comment. The second comment is, how do you fight for me? Let's say I'm not actually an employee, but let's say I was. I don't have a religious exemption. I don't have a medical exemption. I don't have any kind of exemption except I don't want the vaccine. Now, I'm not anti-vax. I've had all the vaccines, all the shots. I was born in 1949. Believe me, I've had plenty of shots since then. I just don't want this one. In fact, I don't even believe it's a vaccine. It is a therapy of some kind. Okay? How are you going to fight for me? You see, having these exemptions is playing the game. You know, it's like crystallizing the fact that somebody is entitled to force you to do something else if you don't want to do that particular thing. How is that productive?
Good question. So what I would say is that the Constitution, number one, it prohibits the government from doing certain things. Government shall not be able to establish religion or prohibit the free exercise thereof. Now, there are certain things that government is not allowed to do that an employer is assigned to do. And I think that we need to make that clear distinction, is that the Constitution, most of the protections and in the Bill of Rights that were put in there are to prohibit the government from taking certain actions. And that's what we're recognizing with this legislation. Now, I've said it before, I've said it, here, and I'll say it again. I firmly believe that no business should be able to require a vaccine, especially a COVID vaccine, from its employees. Period. That's David Borrero's policy. That's what, if you firmly believe that as well, you should certainly pick up the phone and call your legislature and make that known, okay?
Yeah, because that's another part of the equation here. What you're saying, sir, I'm in agreement with you, because it could be, I just don't want to. I just decided this vaccine is not for me, and you have the absolute and utter right to be able to determine that, okay? It can be just about that. But again, like we've been really emphasizing since our inception, that's a great reason to get active. That doesn't mean you have to go and get elected somewhere, but that means is you do have to, as citizens, we have to take the initiative and let our legislators know respectfully, because we're not the left. Respectfully, emphatically, nothing wrong with that. We need to tell them, listen, your constituents want this out of the bill. Right now, since we have a special legislative session, I think it is a golden opportunity for all of us everywhere here, and we're being streamed around the world right now, and people everywhere are watching this broadcast. Right now is the opportunity for you to pick up your phone or send an email or do whatever you have to. Even visit your local legislator. You could do that and tell them, listen, this is, as your constituent, what I am requiring of you as my elected representative. Because you see, as David was saying, as much as a government will do as much as you let them get away with, a government also will not push the line unless they are challenged by the very people that put them there to begin with. And challenge doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. A challenge can be a very positive thing and a very good thing, like something like that augments and improves legislation. So I think that you have a very valid point. And you, sir, the owner of the business, have a very valid point as well. My point sitting in this chair as the executive director of APC is act upon it. Absolutely. I congratulate you, sir. Act upon it and get involved AmericanPC.org. That's our website, AmericanPC.org. We have an entire section of all your elected representatives there. So if you can't find them, you can find them on our website. The contact number is there. The email is there. All I can say is ball's in our court now. So we have to go ahead and take advantage of that. Next question.
One more question.
Hi, David. I'm Frank de Varona. We voted for you. You knocked on my door a couple of times when you were running.
By the way, Frank, before you continue, Frank de Verona is a distinguished veteran of the Bay of Pigs, folks. A big hand for Mr. de Verona. A man who not only fought, but had his very own family members that lost their lives during that action. Thank you, Frank, for your activism. Thank you for your service, and thank you for the lives of your family members that you lost. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Marcos. David, you filed a bill that no one paid attention when you first got to the legislature, and that was a bill saying that we did not want to use any voting machines that were owned by another country. Dominion voting system was purchased by China for $400 million, and it was used in 16 counties of Florida to cheat in the elections, obviously. Because Trump, even though he won Florida by 51.4%, they stole thousands of votes right here in Florida, as they stole votes in the 50 states. But anyway, it's very important for me that you file that bill again, but also I'm quite concerned not only about the Dominion voting system that we know is owned by China, and it uses a software, Smartmatic, that is used in Venezuela to cheat in all the elections, but even the others that were used in Florida, ES&S, that were used in Miami-Dade, and many other counties, they can be hacked and they can be altered. None of them should ever be used. All of them should be banned, because we will not have election integrity until every single electronic voting machine is banned. We need to go back to paper ballots with invisible ink, because paper ballots can also be duplicated and sent, but they have to have invisible ink, so that won't happen. So it's very important that you take that message. We have been contacted the governor with this request. The second request that we have been contacting the governor is that we should have video cameras machine in every single precinct in Florida, because that's how in many counties and in many precincts, they're stealing elections. We saw in Fulton County, in Atlanta, how when they shot the precinct, everybody went home, they were pulling luggage from tables and then running votes for Biden. So it's very, and Florida doesn't have such a law. So the legislation needs to pass such a law, and our great governor needs to approve it. Those two things are quite important. And I wish you would work very hard to get those things done at the next legislature in January, the regular one. Thank you, David.
David, before you say your remarks, please go over with everybody here, because the reason why I said that you fight the good fight and you walk the way you talk is examples such as that legislation. Tell everybody, please, the nature of the legislation that was put out to pasture.
Yeah.
Tell us what you proposed and why that's so very important.
Right. So essentially what the bill that I proudly filed last year, and I'd be more than happy and willing to file it again, is to essentially ban any foreign manufactured or foreign designed voting systems in Florida. Under no circumstance should we be using election systems, hardware or software that is designed by another country. Because it's about protecting the integrity of our elections. If voters do not have confidence in our elections, we've lost our country. And we cannot be so naive to think that election fraud doesn't happen and that we can't see what happened in situations like Venezuela, where these voting machines were tampered with. And there have been news agencies, global news agencies, that have reported how in other countries, these voting systems were tampered with. So we should, in Florida, I firmly believe that we should not be using any foreign owned or designed elections hardware, election software, election system. So I will continue to fight for that. Absolutely. I will continue to fight for any proposal that will further safeguard our elections. Now, we have done it under our House leadership and under our leadership of Governor DeSantis. We banned ballot harvesting in Florida.
Yes.
So no more boleteras in Florida, okay? So we made it illegal for someone to take a ballot that was not from them or their immediate family member and to touch it or to submit it on somebody else's behalf, okay? We made it illegal for a private company to invest. You heard of those Zuckerbucks, right? For a private company to invest and to control it, and for elections departments in the state of Florida to receive private monies to run our elections. So that's no longer going to happen in Florida. I'm very proud of that. And now we're even taking it a step further. Florida, and our governor just announced this about a week ago, that we announced that we're creating a department specially dedicated to elections, fraud, enforcement, and security. Because here's what was happening. There were a lot of individuals who were being collected with basically mass or ballot harvesting, going around these communities, collecting other people's vote by mail ballots and submitting it on their behalf. But these individuals weren't prosecuted. So not only that did we make it illegal, but we're now raising that to a third-degree felony. If you touch and submitted somebody else's ballot who was not an immediate family member, it's going to be a third-degree felony, and it requires the state prosecutors to go after these claims to prevent it.
Outstanding.
Right. We need to safeguard our elections. And I would go even further to stating, absolutely, I agree with you. I personally think once the elections have been actually announced and our machines have counted those ballots, we should just to double check. You ever go in math and you do your double checking your math to make sure? I did that all the time, and I would always find, oh, I missed something there, and I would correct that math. Why can't we do a recount every single time? What's wrong with that? Just to be sure, 110% that our initial count was correct. So
Outstanding. Ladies and gentlemen, State Representative David Borrero, thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Rod, join us up here a second, would you? Folks, this is another outstanding APC meeting. I'm very, very proud to have these gentlemen here. Once again, a big hand for Mr. Rod Dorilas and Mr. David Borrero. Thank you very much, and we will see you next time. Now it's time to meet these gentlemen, ask them whatever you wish, and within reason. And we'll see you next time, next meeting on December 9th, here at the Cuban Museum. Mike Gonzalez from the Heritage Foundation will be here. He will be signing his books. It'll be an awesome event. We can't wait to see you. And until then, remember that one word that we said tonight, enough. Okay, so go get them, get active, be strong, and God bless America. Maybe can you take a picture?